Hi and welcome to this exercise on integers. So we're going to be using a calculator, or in our case an integer calculator, to do this exercise, most of it. But first let's jump into what an integer is. I'm using a green screen here, so the calculator looks a little bit off, so let's ignore that. But basically an integer is a number like 0, 1, 2, but it could also be -1, -2, etc. So any whole number is an integer. And we talked before about in the intro that we have floats as well, so there we can have 1.5 and things like that. But integers is only whole numbers. They have a min and a max also, depending on language. So I'm using Python as an example language, and they are nice enough to give us basically infinitely small or large integers, which is unusual in programming. I mean, there is limitation in memory, for example, but in Python you can even have bigger integers than you can have floats, which is also very unusual. But in most languages there is a max of around plus 2.1 billion. So billion is 10 to the power 9. So 2 and let's think 9 zeros after it. And the minimum number would be minus 2.1 billion. So that is very big and small, respectively. And then so these are languages like Java and C#. We would have from minus 2.1 to plus 2.1 billion. But it's not infinite by any measure. So then in those languages you can also use things like long or double. So those would be data types which are also whole numbers only, but that span to greater numbers than 2.1 billion. So integers have an exact representation, which is also different from floats. So that we can compare two variables, a and b, and do an equality check, for example, if a is equal to b, since integers are exactly represented in the system. We cannot do the same comparison with a float, because even if we have entered a equals 2.0 and b equals 2.0, it's not for sure typically that those numbers are the same with the float. But an integer is exact, so that is one thing to remember. So we're going to go through also a lot of different operations you can do, like multiply, divide, addition, subtraction. We're also going to look at some more intricate things like modulo and absolute value. But let's look at that in our editor. So if we go here, we'll see something like what you're seeing, and I'm using Python as an example now. There is even interact in this level, meaning I can try out things myself, like 7 plus 3 equals 10. Yeah. But mostly we're going to see in the canvas here what happens when we run our code. So in the first level, we're going to do addition, basically just return a plus b, like I'm showing here. So I'm typically not going to show how to solve the levels and run it, but just to give you an idea here. We start with addition and see that we get the same value as the correct answer there. And then in level 2, we're going to do subtraction. So then we basically return a minus b in this level. In level 3, multiplication. So here we're going to return a times b. Division. So here we're going to do a divided by b. And here actually, let's go back to this one here. As it mentions, when you divide with integers, you don't get the decimal part. So 10 divided by 3 is equal to 3 with integer division. And 1 divided by 3 becomes 0. So that's a little bit different than what you would expect if I do interact here. Just to show you, 1 divided by 3 is equal to 0 with integer division. So that can be an upside or a downside if you're not expecting this value as compared to using floats. So we'll see later in the float exercise that then 1 divided by 3 will be 0.33333 and so forth. But this is how integer division works. Then we come to modulo. So let's look quickly at this screen again. And if we go to modulo, what is that? Well, we just talked about when doing integer division, you don't get the decimal part. But something relevant then when doing integer division can be the modulo, or what the remainder is. So if we look at this example here, we have 10 divided by 3, or actually 10 modulo 3. But if we first look at division, 10 divided by 3, we said is equal to 3. But something is missing here, and that is the modulo part. So if we do 10 modulo 3, then we get the remainder. So basically, if we take 10 and divide it with 3, then we have our 3 characters here, down here. We have Katniss, Douglas, and Ada. They each get 3 apples, and that is the value we have up here. But then there is 1 apple that remained undivided between the 3 characters. That is 10 modulo 3. So 10 modulo 3 is 1, whatever remains after doing integer division. And modulo sign is typically in most languages, and certainly in Python, a percentage mark. So 10 modulo 3 would be written like that. And that is what level 5 is about. Then we should do return a modulo b here. And then if we go to level 6, we have absolute value. So if we look again at this green screen, the idea with absolute value is that we are not interested in the sign. So an integer can be -5, it can be +5. So +5, -5. And if we would do absolute value of these, so abs of 5 is equal to or becomes 5, and abs of -5 becomes 5 also. So when we're only interested in the absolute value, in the everything but the sign, then we can do abs. And it's shown here because, so if we say what is the difference from the 0 line, both -5 and +5 are 5 degrees from 0. So that could be one instance where if you do absolute of the value, then you get the 5, which is the difference in degrees from 0. And that is what we do in level 6 here, return the absolute value. And typically it's called abs of whatever the input is. So abs A is what you would return here. That is the integer exercise. Good luck solving it.